I'm Shannon Watkins with the James G. Martin Center for Academic Renewal. I am here today to interview a few experts from UNC Chapel Hill on some AI modules that they've created. They've created these online modules to help students at the university learn more about AI. This is an effort by Carolina AI Literacy to help students as well as faculty and staff develop AI literacy so that they are able to understand the challenges and pitfalls while using AI, mainly in writing and communication. This project was funded through one of 6 seed grants awarded by UNC Chapel Hill's School of Data Science and Society. The grant is designed to encourage interdisciplinary research in data science with the hopes of expanding the project and potentially garnering additional funding from other sources. The 3 experts who created these modules, Daniel Anderson, Dayna Durbin, and Amanda Henley. Dayna Durbin is the undergraduate teaching and learning librarian. Amanda Henley is the head of digital research services. And Daniel Anderson is director of the Carolina Digital Humanities, as well as the director of the Digital Innovation Lab at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Dayna Durbin and Daniel Anderson are here today with me to discuss their work on these modules in greater detail. Dan and Dayna, thank you very much for speaking with me today.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks so much for having us.
So to get started, AI is a powerful tool, as we all know, but it can be used incorrectly or poorly. What are you hoping students will get out of these tutorials?
Well, I can go ahead. Go ahead,
Dayna. Go first. Take us away, Dayna.
All right. So one of the things that we were hearing from students is that they were really kind of intrigued by generative AI tools, but they weren't quite sure if they were staying in the bounds of, the academic honor code, and if they would perhaps be accused of cheating or plagiarism if they use some of these tools. And so we wanted to kind of boost their confidence in using AI tools and their, feel like they had the skills to make those calls. And so we created the 3 modules to initially start. The first one focuses on how to prompt AI, or what kinds of, how to craft the prompts that you put into these AI tools. The module that I worked on focused on fact checking and bias. So making sure that, you're avoiding misinformation when you use these tools, because they can what's called hallucinate or create information that's not factually correct. So just making sure that students understand that piece. And then the third module focuses on avoiding plagiarism. In many of the same skills that you would use with other types of tools and other types of resources also apply when using the generative AI tools. So we just wanted to help students have a better understanding of how the tools work and how they could use them as tools rather than replacing thinking, or writing that the students do on their own, but they can be used as tools to help with those processes.
Yeah. Building on what Dayna said, I think we did want students to have a sense of being in charge of the decisions they make with AI, getting enough background understanding and enough practice with AI so that they don't feel like they're just consumers in this AI space, but can actually kind of produce their own knowledge by making smart choices.
Yes, no, I found that very interesting in one of those modules that addresses the importance of students' background knowledge on a given topic, and how you emphasize the importance of active thinking and how it's directly related to an AI's effectiveness. Can you give us some examples of how students can use their knowledge of subject matter to help guide the AI to give them more specific and useful information?
Yeah, I think so. One of the things that we did in the first year writing course that I taught, that course focuses a lot of times on different genres. And one genre is a literature review, where you take a research topic and you review it and summarize different, perspectives, different bits and pieces of information. So we were experimenting with ChatGPT, and we came up with a sample topic, which was noise pollution from server farms. So if you're in a rural community and there's a server farm, it turns out it creates a whole bunch of noise pollution. And this is what Dayna and my other librarian colleagues might call a nice narrow topic. It's not just something like, happiness. It's a very focused topic. So we asked ChatGPT to give us a literature review from this topic, and it came up with this wonderful set of sources. There was an article about, actually about noise pollution in rural North Carolina, and it was from the Journal of Audio Aesthetics, something like this. And so we thought, wonderful, this saved us all this labor. And as soon as we went to the library and started to look for it, it turns out not only was there not an article with that name, but there isn't even a journal of audio aesthetics. It had all just been kind of made up. And what the students were able to do in that moment was decide that it made more sense for them on their own projects to go straight to the library databases and use what they knew about the topics they were interested in, find articles, survey them, do traditional research, than it did to try to untangle what was legitimate and what was not legitimate from the AI output. So, and then in other instances, if they found a legitimate topic and realized that parts of it were really relevant, but some weren't, they could ask AI to summarize that piece for them really quickly. And that turned out to be a really appropriate use of the technology. So I think what they ended up doing was somewhat almost intuitively saying, this isn't going to be that helpful for me in one instance, but in another instance, recognizing this is how I want to use it. And that's the kind of literacy that we're hoping, a kind of situational awareness that students are able to develop.
No, that's excellent. And yes, I found the module on identifying and looking out for misinformation also very helpful. So what would be, I guess I would like you to elaborate on the problem of misinformation a little bit more. So if a student wanted to find a reliable source on a scholarly source, where would they go? They would go the traditional route of Google Scholar and then use the AI, like you said, to summarize it.
That's kind of what we have been recommending in the library. So we're finding particularly the free tools like the earlier versions of ChatGPT, because they work on a prediction model. If you ask them a question and they can't find the information, the tool will just create some information kind of out of thin air. And it can be very convincing sounding. And, as Dan mentioned, it can come up with article titles and journal titles that sound very realistic. And so what I've been kind of coaching students to do is use the AI tools to help them fill in their background info or to even narrow in on a research topic. So maybe they're interested in something very broad. They can talk with a tool like ChatGPT and say, here's my wider research interest. Can you give me some more narrow topics that I might investigate? And that can kind of help them focus in on what they want to research. Another great use of it that I've coached students on is actually coming up with keywords or search terms that they can use in a tool like Google Scholar or a library database. So sometimes just coming up with the right words to find the articles that you want can be a difficult process, especially if you're new to a research topic and you haven't quite gotten a handle on the language that experts use to describe that topic. ChatGPT is really helpful for that. So those are some ways that I've used it and coach students to use it, kind of the beginning stages of the research process, and then take those keywords and search terms. And as you said, then you turn to Google Scholar or another library database and use them to find legitimate sources that actually exist, that the AI tool hasn't kind of, cobbled together and created based on its training data.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Dayna's kind of describing a research and composition ecosystem where, there are library databases out there, there's Wikipedia out there, there's AI that can help you generate keywords. So there's a whole bunch of different options that you can use to explore. and, thinking about the stage that you're in this process, what's going to be the most useful at any given moment. And then in terms of the misinformation, knowing what stage is going to be more prone or less prone to provide helpful guidance for you, I think is useful. And then, establishing a kind of baseline for students, which is this trust but verify mode in some ways. So yeah, and you might be asking it to, summarize some of the major battles of the Civil War to provide some background information before you dive into your specific topic. And, it's going to be pretty good at that. It has reasonably accurate historical information, and you can save yourself some time by doing that, and then double check if there's some battle that, looks like it doesn't ring true. You can track that down. So I think it's this kind of ecosystem model of how does intellectual work happen, and when can you fit in, some helpful tools. And then it can save you some labor if you have all these, Civil War battles, and then you say, oh, I'd also like to know the date and the location. Please add those to the list. It'll do that for you very quickly. And you realize, I want to maybe be able to sort that. Can you please format that as a spreadsheet format for me? Do all of that work. It makes perfect sense to do that rather than you copy and paste every one of those into a spreadsheet. But knowing that that's a little labor-saving move at a certain moment, but not, appropriate at a different moment, maybe.
No, those distinctions are very, very helpful. Thank you. So AI it is such a new tool available to students. I mean, I was in college not too long ago, but this wasn't something that was available when I was in college. And so I'm sure many students are wondering if there are legitimate uses to AI in research, then how do you properly cite an AI source?
That's a great question. And I have, like you said, these are very new tools. I've only been using ChatGPT coming up on around a year or so. And they change so rapidly too, that it's kind of hard to keep up with the influx of tools that are coming out. And so it's interesting advising students on how to cite their sources when they use, or how to cite their use of AI tools. What we are recommending kind of at a campus level is the guidance is double check with each instructor that they're okay that you're using these AI tools, because we do have a spectrum. Some faculty members are asking students to hold off on using these tools in their particular class or in their discipline. They feel like maybe it's not a good fit for their discipline or their particular course. And so they have a note in their syllabus that says AI tools are not appropriate for this course, don't use them. And then we also have professors who are designing assignments that require students to use the AI tools. So there's a really wide spectrum. And when I advise students, I always say, go to that syllabus. If there's nothing in there, double check with your instructor and just make sure that you're meeting their expectations and their requirements for the course. But if the professor is okay with using AI tools, what we're advising students in that case is to put kind of a note in their references or works cited, or perhaps even if they have a method section of a research paper, in ways that they used these AI tools. So just as an example, maybe I use the AI tool to help me brainstorm my research topic, or I use the AI tool to help me develop keywords that I then used in these certain databases. So kind of a disclosure statement almost, if that makes sense. And then in terms of citing the output, that's kind of a gray area right now. Each citation style has the major ones, APA, MLA, and Chicago, and so on, have advice on how they recommend citing the tools, but they haven't yet been incorporated into the official style guides. So it's still a little bit messy right now. Each style guide kind of advises slightly different. But for me, the most important thing is just acknowledging that you did use the tool and being transparent in your use. And it's interesting too, at the research level, we're even seeing individual journal publishers advise researchers on, here's how, if you used AI, we want you to disclose it, and here's how. So it's been interesting kind of watching the guidance roll out and try to adapt to the tools as quickly as they change also.
Yeah, I think you do need to be really agile, and it's difficult to make blanket recommendations or proclamations at this point. Underneath a lot of this, I think the big concern that um, educators have, particularly people focused on writing, is AI replacing the thinking that students are supposed to do. So, writing instructors are really um, um, concerned about the link between thinking and writing. They see writing as an activity of exploring and generating knowledge. And so if that piece goes away and the writing piece is not handled, that's a big concern. So that's where these kind of declarative statements. This is how I used AI in this project. It helped me in the invention stage. When it came to drafting, I did all of that myself. For editing, I had to change all of the styles, so I asked the machine to do that, keeping track of how the intellectual work of the project was shaped by AI and making sure that you're aware of that to document it and share it with instructors, but also that you're aware of it to make sure that you get to participate in the actual kind of enjoyment, really, and process of working through the ideas of a project.
No, certainly. And I actually had a question on this topic of professors having concerns over the use of AI. And I wonder, I'm sure that students are whether or not they're transparent about it are often going to be using AI. And so what in the long term especially what advice do you have for professors who are really going to have to navigate this new environment and the pluses and minuses of this tool? Do you recommend that they in the end don't just ban it or say you're not allowed to use it at all, but rather encourage maybe on their syllabus to have students have this disclaimer in their assignments?
Yeah, I think there's good news and bad news in these terms, and the bad news first is it's gotten more difficult since generative AI, ChatGPT, has been able to produce prose in ways that a keyword search on Google wasn't able to do in the past. So there's more possibilities for confusion and for prose to be produced that students haven't created. So that's, a challenge. The good news, I think, is the kind of instructional paradigms that have been successful in the past will actually be the most helpful to pull through this moment. So, if you've always asked students to gravitate toward topics that are of interest to them and meaningful and original, then that's going to be a big help. If you built a kind of healthy intellectual process and even a writing process into your assignments where there's scaffolding and there's development and bits and pieces, then that's going to help a lot too. So, good instructional approaches will probably ameliorate a lot of these concerns. Students will be engaged and interested in their work, and if you challenge them, they'll rise to the challenge and do a nice job. If you simply say, produce X amount of words for me tomorrow, it's going to be more prone to those challenges. So, good instruction, I think, is the path.
Excellent, thank you. Is there anything either of you or both of you would like to highlight about the information you share in these modules?
One of the things that's been important to me is to contextualize and historicize this moment, because I think November 2022 is when AI came out, and there's this kind of like dog years phenomenon for technology. So that seems like 20 years ago when this just came out. But there's a long history of humans doing things to augment their intelligence and using that in communication situations and using that to build out culture and build out knowledge. So If you go back in time, I like to cite Socrates, who voiced all of these concerns about the invention of writing. And one concern was that you're going to kind of mediate the exchanges that people have. If I'm looking at you face to face and there's some confusion, I can notice it and you can ask me a question. We have a back and forth. The other piece is memory. If we are able to use writing, then I don't have to remember my speech. And Socrates was worried that if we don't have to remember anything, it's going to, rewire the brain, as psychologists are fond of saying right now. We're going to lose this ability to have a good memory. But that was like a very early instance of taking human thinking and augmenting it. Memory didn't go away, it just kind of moved. So now memory is being put on this piece of paper that I have next to me. I don't have to remember every item. And that's just one long ago instance, but the invention of the telegraph changed our thinking about speed and space in the world. The invention of the word processor changed our thinking about the permanence of language when we write it down. There's all kinds of shifts that have taken place. And I think if you put that historical perspective in place, it helps you better navigate the moment that we're in right now.
Yeah, and I would say, just to build on what Dan was mentioning, I think for me, I try to stress with students that a lot of the same skills that you would use in the research and the writing process, they don't go away in terms of critical thinking and doing that hard intellectual work. Generative AI is a tool that can help you along that path, but it shouldn't be replacing any of those steps. So in a similar way that, when the internet became widely available as a tool, it changed the way that we research and write, but we're still doing that same intellectual work. And I think we'll see as these tools get more widespread and more used, a similar process.
Excellent. Well, thank you both very much. Those are all my questions, and I found that very informative and encouraging, actually. That this is a tool that can be used well and can really assist students in their work. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you for having us.